Here's the thing. History is completely ridiculous. It's full of blunders, misunderstandings, wild rumors, and moments that make you wonder, wait, how did this actually happen? As I go through this list, you might think I'm joking, but nope, every single one of these bizarre tales actually happened. So buckle up, because I'm Mike with List 25, and we're about to tour 25 hilarious historical events you won't believe. But before we get started, as always, don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, click that notification bell so you don't miss out on any new content. Truly helps the channel. With that being said, let's go travel through time? 25. The Great Emu War. Australia once fought emus, not another country. In 1932, farmers in Western Australia said that the huge birds were ruining their wheat crops, so the government sent soldiers with machine guns to deal with them. The plan? Wipe out the emu population. The problem? Emus are fast, travel in unpredictable patterns, and apparently are immune to human battle strategies. Soldiers fired thousands of rounds, but the birds outmaneuvered them at every turn. Headlines joked that the emus had won the war. The army eventually retreated, humiliated, and the emus went on strutting around the fields. Australia had technically lost a war to a bunch of oversized flightless birds. To this day, it remains one of the most gloriously embarrassing moments in military history and proof that nature doesn't always play fair. Or maybe it just plays smarter. 24. The Dancing Plague. In the summer of 1518, a woman in Salzburg began dancing in the street without stopping. Soon, dozens of others joined in, unable to control themselves. The so-called dancing plague spread like wildfire, with people literally collapsing from exhaustion. Some even died after days of non-stop movement. The local authorities, baffled, turned to doctors for advice. The medical consensus? Clearly, the cure was more dancing. Musicians were brought in, platforms were built, and the sick were encouraged to dance their way to health. Needless to say, that didn't work. Historians still debate what caused the madness. Was it mass hysteria, ergot poisoning from moldy bread, or some combination of stress and superstition? Whatever the cause, it was one of the strangest outbreaks in history. 23. Napoleon versus rabbits. Napoleon Bonaparte was one of the greatest military strategists of all time, except when it came to rabbits. After a peace treaty in 1807, Napoleon wanted to celebrate with a rabbit hunt for himself and his officers. His staff arranged hundreds of rabbits for the event, but instead of fleeing, they charged at Napoleon and his men. Why? They'd been raised in captivity and assumed the soldiers were there to feed them. Imagine the Emperor of France and his mighty generals retreating from a fluffy army of bunnies. Napoleon reportedly tried to fight them off with his riding crop, but the rabbits swarmed the group until they had to retreat to their carriages. It was a scene so absurd that it sounds made up, yet it's a true moment where Europe's most feared leader was utterly defeated by cuteness on legs. Unless, of course, it was the rabbit from Monty Python. That thing is deadly. An army of those would be awful. 22. The Cadaver Synod. In one of the weirdest trials in history, Pope Stephen VI decided to put his dead predecessor, Pope Formosus, on trial. Yes, dead. The corpse was dug up, dressed in papal robes, seated on a throne, and interrogated for crimes against the church. Of course, the corpse didn't answer, so a deacon was appointed to speak on his behalf. Predictably, the dead pope was found guilty. His papal garments were stripped and his body was tossed in the Tiber River. This bizarre event, called the Cadaver Synod, shocked even the medieval world. People started questioning whether the papacy had completely lost it. I mean, if you ever think politics is messy today, just remember, it could be worse. 21. Baseball Snowball Riot. Baseball fans are known for being passionate, but in 1891 in Denver, a snowstorm turned a game into pure chaos. The storm hit mid-game, and instead of heading home, the fans decided to start pelting the players with snowballs. The players retaliated, and soon the entire stadium was caught up in a massive snowball fight. Umpires lost control, and the game had to be called off as the scene descended into slapstick mayhem. Some accounts even claim that players and fans teamed up, forming rival snowball armies battling across the field. The only real losers that day were the poor umpires, one of whom hid under the stands until the chaos passed. And I assume the whole thing was played to the tune of the Benny Hill theme. 20. The Defenestration of Prague. The Defenestration of Prague were a series of events where political leaders solved their disputes by tossing rivals out of castle windows. The first major incident in 1419 sparked the Hussite Wars. The second, in 1618, ignited the 30 Years' War. In one famous case, the victims actually survived by landing in a pile of manure. I wonder if they were ancestors of Biff Tannen. Anyway, imagine telling future historians that your life was saved because of well-placed dung. These events are so legendary that defenestration became the official word for tossing someone out a window. Today, it's just a reminder of how intense politics once was. Forget angry debates or online trolling. Back then, a bad day at the office could literally end with a window exit. 19. Jackson's Cheese Party. President Andrew Jackson left the White House with a bang. Or, more accurately, with cheese. During his presidency, Jackson had been gifted a massive 1,400-pound block of cheddar. Too large to eat alone, he decided to throw an open party when his term ended in 1837, inviting the public to come and help devour it. Thousands of visitors showed up, crowding the White House to sample the giant cheese. The smell reportedly lingered for months, and incoming President Martin Van Buren complained about the odor. The big block of cheese became so famous, it even inspired a storyline in the TV show The West Wing. This wasn't just a quirky presidential party. It was a literal cheese feast that turned the White House into the smelliest place in Washington. Politicians may love grand gestures, but few have ever topped Jackson's dairy-based farewell. 18. The day the US accidentally invaded itself. In 1943, American forces carried out a practice invasion in Newfoundland, which at the time was under British control. The soldiers stormed the beach, fully armed and prepared for combat. The problem? Nobody had informed the local Allied troops, who thought they were under actual attack. Chaos erupted as both sides scrambled to figure out what was happening. Eventually, the mistake was realized, and the incident was chalked up as a training exercise gone wrong. Fortunately, no lives were lost, but the idea of the US Army accidentally having invaded Allied territory remains one of the funniest wartime blunders. It's a story that proves even the most powerful militaries can have embarrassingly bad days. If nothing else, it gave soldiers plenty of awkward stories to tell their grandchildren about that time they invaded friendly soil. 17. The Great Molasses Flood. On a freezing January day in 1919 in Boston, a giant molasses storage tank exploded, spilling a torrent of sticky syrup through the city streets. The wave was flowing at 35 miles an hour and stood more than 25 feet tall. It destroyed buildings, imprisoned horses, and killed 21 people. Locals claim the smell of molasses lingered in the city for decades. Cleanup personnel had to contend with syrup-soaked streets, homes, and even harbor water. The accident was caused in part by bad construction and neglect on the side of the tank's owners. While awful, the idea of an entire city drenched in molasses is so ludicrous that it's difficult to not see it as a dark comedy sketch. Today, the Great Molasses Flood stands as one of history's most bizarre and syrup-soaked catastrophes, a moment when Boston literally drowned in sweetness. Some joked that Boston became the only city in the world where you could smell dessert before you saw it. 16. The Pig War. The Pig War wasn't much of a war at all. It started in 1859 when an American settler shot a British pig on San Juan Island, a disputed territory between the US and Britain. The pig had wandered into the man's garden and was rooting through his potatoes, which apparently was enough to spark an international crisis. British and American troops both mobilized to the island, and for a brief moment, it looked like a war might actually break out over one unlucky pig. Fortunately, cooler heads prevailed, and the conflict ended without human bloodshed. The only casualty of the Pig War was, well, the pig. The dispute was eventually settled diplomatically, but the name stuck. It's one of those moments in history where you have to laugh. Two global powers nearly went to war because of a potato-thieving farm animal. 15. Operation Paul Bunyan. In 1976, tensions in the Korean demilitarized zone exploded in one of the strangest ways possible. over a tree. American and South Korean troops tried to trim a poplar tree that blocked the line of sight between two checkpoints. North Korean soldiers attacked, killing 2 US officers. The US decided to respond with overwhelming force, but not with bombs or bullets. Instead, they launched Operation Paul Bunyan. Hundreds of troops, armored vehicles, helicopters, and even B-52 bombers were deployed, all to chop down the tree. Soldiers carried chainsaws and engineers hacked it to the ground under heavy protection. The operation worked. North Korea backed off. But the image of one of the world's most powerful militaries unleashing a show of force that could have started World War III just to do some landscaping remains one of the most absurd moments in Cold War history. 14. The hat tax and wig craze. In 18th century Britain, hats weren't just fashion statements, they were taxable. To raise funds, Parliament imposed a hat tax, with higher rates applied to more expensive hats. Wonder how much this one would have been. People weren't delighted about paying more for their headwear, so they discovered a loophole. Wigs. Because wigs were not taxed, the upper classes began replacing hats with extravagant powdered wigs. This gave rise to one of the most ridiculous fashion trends in history. The bigger the wig, the higher the status, and the more absurd you looked. People literally wore mountains of powdered hair just to dodge taxes. The craze got so out of hand that wigs became cultural symbols, mocked in plays, jokes, and political cartoons. All thanks to a tax collector's bright idea. It's a reminder that whenever governments try to get creative with taxes, people get even more creative, finding ways around them, with hilarious results. 13. The affair of the diamond necklace. In the 1780s, con artists tricked a French cardinal into believing he was helping the Queen secretly buy an extravagant diamond necklace to win back King Louis XVI's affection. The ruse included forged letters, a lady imitating the Queen, and a great deal of trickery. When the conspiracy was revealed, the populace incorrectly assumed Marie Antoinette was behind it, perpetuating the narrative that she was rich and out of touch. In fact, she had nothing to do with it. Nonetheless, the scandal ruined her reputation and increased popular outrage, which eventually led to the French Revolution. Imagine being hated by an entire country for jewelry you never even saw. It's one of history's most unfair, and oddly funny, cases of mistaken identity. 12. The toilet paper panic. In 1973, America briefly lost its mind over toilet paper. It all started when a late-night comedian joked about a shortage. Viewers, already nervous about real shortages of gasoline and other goods during the energy crisis, took him seriously. The next day, people rushed stores, buying toilet paper in bulk. The shelves emptied, and the joke became a reality. There was actually a shortage, because people panicked. For weeks, newspapers ran headlines about toilet paper mayhem, with retailers rationing rolls and fights breaking out in grocery aisles. Families stockpiled it like it was the apocalypse. Eventually, supplies caught up and the panic subsided, but not before the whole country had embarrassed itself. It's a textbook case of self-fulfilling prophecy. Say there's no toilet paper, and suddenly everyone believes it. America's brief toilet paper craziness demonstrates that rumors can spread quicker than reality. And I'm pretty sure we all had to deal with that again during COVID. 11. Einstein's tongue photo. Albert Einstein, genius behind the theory of relativity, also gave us one of history's most playful photographs. On his 72nd birthday, hounded by photographers, Einstein got tired of posing seriously. Instead, he stuck out his tongue. The moment was captured, and the goofy image of one of the smartest men in history became iconic. Einstein himself loved it so much that he ordered prints to send to friends. The photo was a reminder that brilliance doesn't have to mean being serious all the time. Einstein's mischievous grin, or tongue in this case, made him seem human and approachable, not just a distant intellectual giant. Today, that photo is nearly as famous as his scientific work, plastered on posters, mugs, and memes. For someone who unlocked the mysteries of the universe, it's funny that one of his greatest legacies is simply looking silly on camera. 10. The Baseball Dog Riot. Baseball has seen plenty of odd moments, but few top the stray dog invasion of 1912. During a Washington Senators game, a pack of dogs burst onto the field, chasing balls, players, and each other. The crowd roared with laughter as players tried, and failed, to wrangle the animals. Soon, fans jumped onto the field to help, turning the game into a slapstick circus. Umpires had no choice but to pause until the chaos subsided. Reports described the scene as both hilarious and exasperating. No one remembered the score that day, but everyone remembered the dog stealing his spotlight. It's a perfect reminder that sometimes the most memorable sports moments have nothing to do with the sport itself. For the fans, it was probably the best entertainment their ticket had ever bought them. The dogs, meanwhile, just had the time of their lives. 9. The War of the Oaken Bucket. If you ever think modern wars start over ridiculous reasons, remember this. In 1325, 2 Italian city-states went to war over a bucket. Modena stole a wooden bucket from Bologna, and Bologna demanded it back. Modena refused, and tensions escalated into the Battle of Zeppolino. Thousands of soldiers clashed, and hundreds were killed, all over a water container. Modena emerged triumphant, proudly displaying the pail as a trophy. The bucket is still preserved today in Modena, a strange legacy of medieval pettiness. It's both awful and funny. Human lives are lost for a glorified pail. Historians continue to scoff at the foolishness, yet it's a wonderful example of how pride and ego can run wild. The War of the Oaken Bucket stands as one of the most ludicrous conflicts ever fought, and over the least impressive prize imaginable. I mean, seriously, hang on, I got a bucket over here I can give Italy. I got you. 8. The Whiskey Rebellion. In the early days of the United States, the government decided to tax whiskey. Bad idea. On the frontier, whiskey wasn't just a drink, it was currency. Farmers and distillers in Pennsylvania saw the tax as an attack on their livelihood and revolted. Armed mobs attacked tax collectors, and violence spread. The rebellion got so serious that President George Washington personally led an army of nearly 13,000 troops to put it down. It was the first and last time a sitting U.S. president commanded soldiers in the field. The show of force worked. The rebellion fizzled without much bloodshed. But the image of Washington, the Revolutionary War hero and first president, saddling up to defend a whiskey tax is absurd. It shows how America's early years weren't just about liberty and democracy, they were also about people being really, really mad about booze. 7. Operation Kitty. Spies are supposed to be sleek and sophisticated. Bond. James Bond. But during the Cold War, the CIA attempted one of the silliest operations in espionage history, turning cats into spies. The plan, called Operation Acoustic Kitty, involved surgically implanting microphones and transmitters into cats and then setting them to eavesdrop on Soviet officials. On its first mission, the poor cat was released near a Soviet compound and immediately hit by a taxi. The project was quietly abandoned after millions of dollars had been wasted. It's a tragic story for the cat, but also an absurd example of Cold War paranoia. Intelligence agencies were so desperate for an edge that they thought a wired-up house cat could change the balance of power. Instead, it became one of the most infamous spy blunders ever. James Bond would never. Although he did dress up as an alligator once, so he might. The Roger Moore era, James Bond might. 6. The London Beer Flood. London has seen its share of disasters, but few as strange as the Great Beer Flood. In 1814, a massive vat at a local brewery burst, sending over 1 million liters of beer flooding into the streets. The waves knocked down walls, destroyed homes, and tragically killed 8 people. Some residents tried scooping up beer in pots and pans, while others waded in as if it were some bizarre festival. The smell of beer lingered for weeks, and cleanup was a sticky nightmare. The brewery argued in court that the disaster was an act of God, and surprisingly, they weren't held liable. The flood stands out as one of history's oddest industrial mishaps, a tragedy wrapped in absurdity. Today, it's remembered almost like a dark comedy, an entire neighborhood destroyed not by fire or quake, but by a tidal wave of ale. If nothing else, it proves Londoners would literally go down with the pint. 5. The Phantom Time Hypothesis. In the 90s, a German historian named Herbert Illig proposed one of the strangest historical theories ever, that nearly 300 years of the Middle Ages never happened. According to his phantom time hypothesis, the years 1614 through 911 were fabricated, meaning Charlemagne and his empire were basically made up. Illich argued that calendar errors and forged documents tricked us into believing these centuries existed. While mainstream historians debunked the idea, it gained a cult following. Imagine discovering your birthday, or your entire family tree, was in a phantom century that didn't exist. It's a hilarious reminder that history isn't just about what happened, but also about how people think it happened. 4. The Great Fire of London's odd survivor. The Great Fire of London in 1666 destroyed most of the city, but it also left behind one hilariously random survivor: a giant hunk of cheese. A wealthy merchant had stored an enormous wheel of Parmesan in his cellar, and while fire consumed his home, the cheese endured. Reports spread quickly that among the ashes of London, a lone block of cheese had made it through unscathed. Considering how much people loved their food in the 17th century, this bizarre detail became a talking point for years. The tragedy of the fire was immense, but the story of the cheese gave Londoners something absurd to laugh about as they rebuilt. 3. The Corpse Bride of Hungary. In 18th century Hungary, villagers pulled a bizarre prank that turned into a historical oddity. A group of young men, unhappy with one of their bachelor friends refusing to marry, decided to teach him a lesson. They staged a mock wedding, complete with a priest, guests, and a corpse as the bride. Yes, they actually dug up a body, dressed it in bridal clothes, and forced their friend through the entire wedding ceremony. The event horrified some, but entertained others, and it became infamous as one of the strangest jokes in European folklore. Needless to say, it didn't encourage the man to marry anytime soon. Today, it reads more like the plot of a dark comedy film than a real event, but it really happened. Proof that history's sense of humor was sometimes way too morbid. 2. The Tulip Mania bubble. Long before cryptocurrency or stock bubbles, the Dutch went wild for tulips. In the 1630s, tulip bulbs became the hottest commodity in Europe. Prices have soared to ludicrous levels, with a single bulb costing more than a home. People traded their land, businesses, and fortunes to acquire rare tulip types. The bubble eventually popped. Prices plummeted overnight, and many investors lost everything. For many years, plays and pamphlets criticized the foolishness of financial disaster over flowers. It's noted as the first known economic bubble and fall in history. What makes it hilarious in hindsight is the sheer irrationality. People literally gambled everything on plants. At the peak of the craze, some rare bulbs were worth more than a skilled craftsman's lifetime salary. All for flowers that, at the end of the day, just sat in your garden looking pretty. As financial disasters go, this one had more petals than profits. 1. The Siege of Salzburg and Musical Warfare. During the Peasant War of 1525, Salzburg was besieged. Instead of relying solely on guns, the defenders used music as psychological warfare. To intimidate intruders, the city's musicians scaled the walls and played their loudest, most chaotic tunes on repeat. Imagine medieval bagpipes, drums, and horns booming all day and night. It worked better than intended, since the peasants who were attacking got discouraged, angry, and finally gave up. While battles usually hinge on swords and cannons, Salzburg managed to save itself with what was essentially the world's weirdest rock concert. The story proves that sometimes noise can be mightier than the sword, and that, in the right hands, music really can kill a vibe. Today, it stands as one of history's strangest and funniest siege tactics. And that's all I have for you today, but before you go, how about some bonus trivia? Did you know that when Albert Einstein immigrated to the US in 1933, he famously forgot his luggage on the ship? Customs officers had to track it down and ship it later. For a genius, he wasn't always so practical. And now, there are some time-bending facts that'll blow you away, so you need to check out this video right here. And as always, like, share, comment, subscribe, notification bell. Do all that. Thank you so much again, and I'll see you soon. Bye.